Hey, I'm Elaine Lowe, one of the hosts of the Ankler podcast, and today we have a bonus episode, a conversation between my Ankler boss, Janice Min, and the legendary Tina Brown, writer of the newsletter Fresh Hell. Janice, you want to set this one up?
Yeah, thanks, Elaine. So Substack, where the Ankler lives, they're doing this experiment with live video. I think it's probably a little bit of a reaction to some of the chaos in the social media world. But anyway, a lot of voices on the platform are trying it. Our audience, the Ankler audience, was invited to watch a conversation between Richard Rushfield and the producer Ted Hope this week, for example, and that was a big hit.
Yeah, that was a good one.
It was good, really good. Anyway, Tina, who I've known a long time, invited me onto her show this week. And as many people know, she's a big royal watcher. And she wrote two amazing books about the royals. Most recently, one called The Palace Papers and an earlier book about Princess Diana. And she wanted to talk about Meghan Markle's new show on Netflix, With Love, Meghan, which, Elaine, I think that's burning up our Slack.
Yeah. Don't we all want to talk about that?
We did, we have, and we will continue to. But then she also wanted to talk about a bunch of other things, including the Oscars, Demi Moore's loss. If you recall, she did the iconic Vanity Fair cover of a nude pregnant Demi Moore. And then we also talk about, because how could we not, DOGE. And of course, and what's going on politically. But I think our listeners, the Ankler listeners, will really like what she has to say about independent voices, writing, the arts, and creativity having a higher premium than ever in today's sort of endless scrolling, nihilistic culture. I posed the question to her, do you think, in this scrolling culture, do people know good versus bad? And people will like her answer. So anyway, I thought the Ankler audience would like this. So we're sharing the audio from the conversation here. It's not a conventional interview. You're kind of jumping into a conversation between two friends.
Oh, well, I think it's going to be a really good one to be a fly on the wall for. All right, everyone, let's have a listen.
Welcome, Fresh Hellions and Anklers out there. I'm so excited to be today talking to the great founder, CEO of The Ankler, which is everything you ever want to know about the entertainment world, Janice Min, my friend. So welcome, Janice.
Hi, Tina. This is going to be fun, I think, right?
It is. It's going to be great. So we have so much to get through. Oh, my God. I don't know where we even start here. But let's start with, of course, the Meghan show, right? Love from Meghan. Did you download it all instantly, or did you decide to take a massive rain check?
Well, okay. So this is a show. We were joking in our Ankler Slack. This is a show you can watch, certainly second screen going. And then we were joking, even a third screen you can have going at the same time. Okay, so for starters, why is she in a fake house? That's one of the strangest things I've ever seen. Why is she cooking with tomatoes constantly in a white outfit? And also, those people who are coming to her house, they're not really her friends. Like, again, oh, shocker, reality TV is cast. But I also feel like they end up in like a hostage situation where you're making candles and making tea bags and like harvesting vegetables all day long. It's
for your makeup artist. I mean, what kind of a welcome does she give to other friends if she's doing that for a makeup artist, is what I was thinking. But I mean, to me, I guess I felt that it was like a sort of cultural fossil in a strange way, because it was like such a different era. She's always brilliantly behind the curve, Meghan, if you know what I mean. She's, this was like flashback 2013 to the era of the TIG, her blog.
Yes.
Which was sort of shout outs for humanitarian causes and diptych candles and bath products made by women who've been domestically abused or whatever. I mean, it was this kind of moment in time when that's what it all was. And it's almost as if she wanted to sort of airbrush out everything that happened since and sort of go back to that moment in time when that's what we were talking about.
Totally. It's a little HGTV 2012, right? But
yes.
But also, okay, you know what this reminded me of? And I would be surprised if you didn't think of this moment too. And it was for people who were following media closely at this time, it was like when Meghan Kelly left Fox News and came to NBC and did that daytime talk show. And she's like, you know what? This is who I really am. I love moms and I love to cook and talk about raising kids. And then, that flames out and she gets paid her $60 million check. And she comes back to like I'm here to, embrace Donald Trump and kill my enemies. And, she tried on a persona. It didn't work. But I think with Meghan, she spent so much time trying to empower women, taking that up as her cause, like the whole Greenleaf apartment situation where that melded cooking too. But this is very, as the kids would say, trad wife. I was very surprised.
I suppose, but it was also very much about that moment when everyone was in sort of gentle beiges and pastels and was sort of doing it with lavender and all of that. I mean, it was just, as you say, just so unbelievably inauthentic, really. And she's still searching for that thing that makes her authentic. But, it's like she wants to go back to that era, I think, that was for her a much better era. But in the meantime, all of this stuff has happened. So probably it would have been better if she had been like Meghan Kelly, coming back like it should have been her sitting there saying, will someone, for God's sake, get me an effing project? It's like, I don't have anything to do. I can't hang on to staff. I'm at my wit's end. I mean, it's like it actually would have been refreshing to see a bit of that.
I would watch that all day long. If she said, you know what? Having a career is hard. This is my escape. I just, it's kind of like my meditation. I like to cook and do this kind of domestic things. You can laugh at this, but I'm trying to build a business. So this is what I'm doing. And I just be honest about it, right?
Yeah, I agree. But you could also, it's really almost as if she really, at this point, she just needs like more money. And then she doesn't have to do any job. I'm sorry, but clearly she likes her Montecito life. Who wouldn't? I mean, I was very envious looking out at those mountains. And I just thought, Meghan's house, whoever's house it was, it all looked pretty pleasant. It looked pretty pleasant. What wasn't pleasant was having to kind of like schlep around doing this ridiculous show, and have to deal with all that kind of aggravation of everybody hating it and all that. But also it was like, I just feel bad for her because it's like she just gets it wrong. I mean, even when she just announced it, suddenly there was the fire. So she then has to put it off. So then she puts it off. And what happens is like, oh, World War III is happening around her. We have, everybody's minds are on like Zelensky and Ukraine, and she's sort of still sort of standing there with her country girl basket like full of chives or whatever it is. I don't know. Have you ever met a beekeeper? I just find this whole hive stuff so kind of oddly cloying, if that's the word, for making all that honey. I wanted to sort of throw up afterwards. I had so much sugar in my system.
Well, Tina, do you think she's ever met a beekeeper until that guy who looks like Weird Al Yankovic showed up on the set? I mean, honestly, do you think they'd ever met until 5 minutes before?
So what I was wondering today was like, now that the Oscars is over, does Hollywood go through a kind of post-coital or whatever the word is, postpartum kind of collapse after the Oscars, or is it just a teeny corner, which, I mean, do people feel like, well, what was that all about?
I mean, all of the above. I think people who are in their sort of Oscar letdown are both completely like relieved. I mean, there was a well-known publicist who sent out this mass email like, thank God it's over, no more parties, no more fake panels, and like no more this or that. And so I think there's that sense of relief. But I think, Hollywood is not getting bigger at the moment in Los Angeles. So I think there are just tons of people who don't even know what the Oscars necessarily are or were watching. And so, I mean, it's always like all these bubbles, and it's like a tale of two cities. It's like, media in New York. If you're not in it, you don't care.
Although I think more people watched it this year than last year, which surprised me, given that no one actually had seen any of the films, really, right?
Well, I mean, that was a great thing. So I think I was so happy the ratings were up. I really liked the people at the Academy. I liked the movies. And the industry needed that boost. I think to hear this drumbeat constantly of like, things are down, the production is down, jobs are lost. And like, the announcements of layoffs are so, you remember when those were huge headlines, and now it's just part of the fabric of your day, which is so depressing. And we've seen that this week with the layoffs in news divisions at the conglomerates who also have Hollywood divisions. And it's bleak time. So I think that uplifting message was great. I thought Conan O'Brien was great, particularly when he had that moment where he said, let's stop and remember why we do this. And I've heard from a lot of people that was like a real shot in the arm to all these creative people who work here who, are told on a daily basis that no one wants to buy their project and they're losing cultural relevance to TikTok. So I thought that was lovely.
I so agree with that. It is so demoralizing to be any kind of an artist or care about quality. If you're a quality person right now, you are just kicked in the groin morning, noon, and night. I mean, if you're a quality person, you're like living in Trump's office and you're Zelensky. Just people beating on you, saying you're irrelevant, you're going,
have you said thank you?
Don't surrender. Just surrender completely to all of the crap out there. You're done. You're finished. It is so demoralizing. And I think that's right. When I was looking at the room, I was thinking how heartwarming it must have been for people to actually feel that their work was being talked about.
Completely. And I think we all know that everything getting made, or so much of what's getting made right now, is kind of this machine made of content, of sequels and universes and known IP, and how do you build off of that? And Anora was a $6 million budget movie made by an independent studio, Neon, which also made Parasite, that won Best Picture a few years back. And this is a movie about a sex worker marrying the son of a Russian oligarch. Like, you could never take this movie to Disney or Warner Brothers and even have a meeting. And so I can see why the voters supported that. There is this real movement towards independent thought, independent film. How do you remain creative particularly in these times where not only do you have these economic forces working against you, but also this culture that's very terrified of not getting on the wrong side of whatever the other side is.
Well, no, because we are seeing the death of Edge, aren't we? I mean, total death of Edge. God. I mean, I don't even know where you go anymore with anything to do with any sort of controversy in either politically or in the world or in a culture. I mean, Apple is so safe. I mean, you can't get anything on Apple that isn't just completely bland. I mean, there's just no place. HBO has kind of reduced so much that there's very little that, they can really do. I mean, thank God for White Lotus, but
thank God.
It's a really terrible thing that The Apprentice couldn't get shown, and the movie of the which of course won, the documentary, the Israeli and the Palestinian,
can't get a buyer, Tina.
Can't get a buyer, which is so horrendously craven, and is it going to get a buyer, do you think, now after winning the Oscar?
No, there's just I think this, for starters, a documentary like that. So it's all about return on investment. If you put money into No Other Land, which is about, it's made by an Israeli and a Palestinian filmmaker about the settlements in Gaza. And so if you put that film up on, let's say, your Netflix or your Paramount Plus, you're not going to make your money back on that unless you're putting it up for free. And then even then, it's not worth the blowback you're going to get from all sorts of sides, all sorts of quarters on that. And so you're at, nobody can have a reasonable conversation about difficult topics anymore, or at least.
Well, this is true, but there are so many creative and clever and brilliant people in the world. I don't see how in the end we just surrender to that. I mean, there's going to have to be somebody who comes up with a way to have some kind of a platform that makes money in some kind of a way where real stuff can be done. I mean, I realize that is a really fluffy thing to be saying. Having a solution for it. But you just simply cannot turn the world into this kind of flaccid garbage and have nobody fight back. I suppose AI will just replace us all, so there won't be an argument about it. But I feel there's such bitterness. But at the same time, the journalism part of it, I do this conference in England called Truth Tellers Summit, it's called, and it's about journalism. And it has made me so much better informed about all these amazing networks of journalists all over the world who are forming these platforms with non-profit dollars, and they're doing this incredible work. So they are doing their incredible work. But of course, the audiences are small for it. And that is the problem. How do you get the audiences for this kind of material when you don't have a big distribution platform?
Right. And whether there's not a marketing team to push whatever you have made. I mean, I do think, so in all the most creative periods of Hollywood, they were always preceded by terrible periods of Hollywood. And so the 1970s, which many people consider to be the greatest decade in film. And that's where you had original ideas come out, The Godfather, Deer Hunter, so on and so on. But the 60s were considered a horrible decade for entertainment, like schlock. I think I Dream of Jeannie, just silly sitcoms, bad movies. I think the audience revolts and they're like, I can't. Like, this is not for me. Like, give me something original that catches on. And I'd like to think Honora was no Godfather, right? It's never going to be that big, but it caught on. People wanted to see something that felt like audacious, right?
And are the numbers saying that?
Honora made money at the box office. The Brutalist made money at the box office, which is an A24 film, another independent studio.
It made money. That's absolutely incredible. I can't quite forgive Adrian Brody for tossing that gum at Georgina Chapman. I think that Georgina's had enough trauma, in her life after her marriage to Harvey Weinstein. She didn't actually deserve having gum thrown at her by her current partner. But
the Adrian Brody speech is one for the ages. It's the longest Oscar acceptance speech in history. But that's also where you're like, this is kind of the things that also annoy people about Hollywood. It's like, okay, you won, we got it, but you didn't just solve Middle East peace, you didn't just cure cancer, But you kind of watch these shows because you want someone to go a little bit off the rails.
Yes, you do. But speaking of which, it was very unpolitical, wasn't it? There wasn't a peep from anyone on the stage. Had they been told, we don't want to hear one bad thing about what's happening in the world?
I think the unofficial memo, and I think there were direct conversations and just an indirect conversation, people just fell in line. This is a hard time for the industry. Don't alienate half the audience. Don't make yourself, a target on social media. Just be happy. And I think the fires here are horrible, but it also gave something else to talk about that was important. And so I think people could get behind that conversation. Even when Conan made those few jokes, about Honora, it's a movie where people stand up to a Russian thug, and at least someone is. And that actually kind of stunned me. Because no one's doing that anymore.
No, that's what really struck me. But at the same time, God, we did get very sick of people doing that. So in some ways, maybe that's why the ratings were up.
But I do think part of the reason the ratings also were up were if you're consuming media in any way, it's a really hard time. It's very stressful. If you don't love what's going on, it is one of the worst times probably of your life. And it felt like, let's just watch 3.5 to 4 hours of this other thing, right? It felt a little bit like old times.
Yes,
escape.
There is that. I was very interested in this piece that you had in the Ankler today about how, because of the price of streamers and the cost of it, etc., that in fact entertainment is being made more and more for the top 10%. So it's a kind of the inequality essentially in America is now extending to entertainment. So what is mass entertainment in a sense?
Well,
right?
That is a really good question, Tina. I think that, we have this oligarch situation forming in Washington, D.C., and Bezos and Tim Cook tripping over their shoelaces to go kiss Donald Trump's ring, all of that. So that wealth inequality is happening all across the country. So the Wall Street Journal had this really interesting chart the other day that said 50% of American spending is coming from the top 10 wealthiest percent of people. And that's why you're seeing all this catering by entertainment companies. How many times there's a joke in the Oscars? How many times has Netflix raised prices on you? Disneyland is offering, every experience is premium, more. And so they're just finding ways to soak the top 10% of spenders more. But what has happened as a result of that, and there's a really good point, the person who wrote the story, an entertainment strategy guy, is that for live sporting events, the number of seats in arenas has actually gone down because they're all getting replaced. Forget taking your kids to a game. They're all getting replaced by luxury boxes and, expensive seating. And so this is what's happening in entertainment too. All of us used to just be able to turn on the TV, watch 3, then 4 channels, have cable. And it was very democratizing. But now it's it's becoming a product also of the wealthy. To go to a movie is expensive, and that's not great.
And what at the same time, we have, MAGA, which hates all that stuff. So what are they watching, and where are they watching?
Well, I think they're watching wrestling and UFC, right? And I think they're watching NFL, right? I'm sure a lot of people tuning in have seen every headline that the NFL had, 96 of the top 100 most watched shows in 2024. And so, we're kind of in this very male dominated sort of red meat, entertainment sphere at the moment, where that stuff is leading, and money is getting spent on that. And a lot of money is getting spent on sports, sports rights, the fight to get sports. And there's also this whole world of made up sports that are now emerging that the streamers are paying money for, like the Tiger Woods Golf League, I think it's 3 men teams or something like that. But that money is money that is getting taken out of spending unscripted content, on unscripted TV shows and on feature films, because they just want people to lean back, watch the sporting program, sports program. Sponsors like it better because nothing controversial is going to come up. And it's kind of like the return of almost an old-fashioned broadcast television model, but very male skewing. And so so I think when you look at someone like Amazon that has gotten Thursday Night Football rights, you're seeing it's a joke. They have leaned really heavily into dad TV and also, man with gun TV. So Reacher and a lot of these kind of action-y shows.
Now, I know I spend my time hopelessly surfing around, trying to find something that isn't about, Kevin Costner in a cowboy hat. But I succumb anyway and watch them anyhow. Otherwise, what I'm watching is police procedurals. I was so excited by Dick Wolf coming back with that new thing he's got called On Call or whatever it is. I watched every one of them. I completely binged it. And, when all else fails, as always, it's all back to Law and Order. It's so lame. It's ridiculous. But,
I know, but it's that comfort food watching, right? You watch what you know, and people seem to want to watch what they know more than they ever did now.
Yeah, I know. Well, what's interesting too is the way people are obsessed with watching, sort of podcasts on YouTube, isn't it? Hours and hours of, some sweaty guy on a T-shirt with headphones. And it's it seems to be addictive to people.
True. But Tina, I'm sure you play this game all the time with people. Whatever happened to, do you remember when? And it's which is the place where all the people disappeared? Was it Jamestown or Roanoke? But but media, New York publishing is like that, right? Where did they go? What happened to them?
Well, the other thing is that you ask people what they're doing, and it takes them 10 minutes to answer because they go well, on Monday I do a bit of teaching, at SCUNY, and then on Tuesday, I'm sort of, it's pathetic. It's piecework.
It's horrible. It's horrible. And I don't know. Maybe it's like that New York Magazine story that everyone's being supported by their parents. But I don't even know how people can afford to live in New York if you're in this sort of, the gig economy of former publishing people, right? It's...
I know. And all these people, now it's really come for the network news, as you said earlier.
Oh my God.
They're all being laid off, and they're getting no real notice that this was going to happen. Suddenly all these really talented producers and APs and, gone. They don't have a place to work. So it's, I guess that's what you're experiencing in Hollywood. What are people doing?
What are they doing?
What are they doing?
Okay, so there's this terrible trend here of various ways that if you're a writer, which is kind of the foundation of all these projects, if you're a writer, you're being asked to create for free. And so there are all sorts of ways that you're being, even though that Writers Guild agreement, there was a strike in it all, you were supposed to stop free labor, but people are still being asked to develop for free. There's this horrible thing here called an if-come deal, where they might like your project.
What? That sounds rather pornographic. What is
porny?
That?
It sounds totally porny. But there are these deals that writers they kind of have no other choice sometimes to sign. Big names are being subjected to this. So it's Tina Brown has a great concept for a series. And so Warner Brothers Studios decides they're going to develop it with Tina Brown. But guess what, Tina? You're going to
develop, you're going to do all the drafts, all the revisions, all the work, take notes. You're going to set a budget for this show without getting paid a single cent unless it sells when we take it to market. And so people are doing oftentimes like 8 months, a year of like free labor for a studio to then decide on a whim, like, we decided not to move ahead with it, or no one bought it.
It's actually obscene to hear that, really, because it's in the enslavement of talent and it's the exploitation of talent. Because the trouble is, writers, directors, journalists, we love our work so much that there's probably no other profession where you couldn't say to a dentist,
right,
work for 8 months, for no money. It just wouldn't happen. It's like, but people love their work so much as journalists and writers, and
so you just want to do it. There's no one. Remember the $4 a word days of New York City publishing, right? And so now there are. I think people. I think the calculation that people who work in creative fields have to make now. Well, is it better if someone just sees what I do as opposed to doing nothing at all? And I think there are people who are trying to hold what's called their quote here, the amount you're going to get paid, and and so you're always trying to. But do you want to hold your quote and be virtuous and not get work, or do you want to get your stuff out there?
So, do you think that the writers' strike was actually a setback, really, for this community? Was it a mistake?
I don't think it was a mistake, but I do think it created this pause in the industry where the studios and streamers were like, we did okay. Like, let's protect ourselves against that happening again and start investing in sports. Let's cut our slate. Let's take all our production overseas to many countries where we don't have to hire union workers. So I think it created a pause for the studios and streamers to get more diabolical. It's a little bit like Spy versus Spy. Like, writers create a new demand and the studios figure out the workaround.
Yeah, it is very evil. I guess what makes me furious is the fact that, I have a huge respect for these tech geniuses who have, changed our world, but they have absolutely no respect for us at all. Their attitude to artists and creators is one of absolute contempt, actually. And it's like, we don't really need you. We're going to you are at some point going to be AI anyway. We're not going to pay you. It's like the writing of great sentences is so, nothing like writing code in terms of, the way it's valued. And in fact, you could argue, and I do, that a great sentence is going to last a lot longer than very ephemeral code writing by people who we're not even going to know their names, and it actually does tremendously offend me, in fact. But it's useless to be offended. We just have to sort of figure out ways to get around it.
Well, Tina, let me ask you, an awful question. Do you think that the public and the people who've been raised on their phones actually know the difference between good and bad, or care or view it in the same way?
Well, I still strongly believe that quality does have a passionate audience. And I say that because of various things. First of all, you talked about, the Anora winning as a kind of like this whole film that was a quality film. Secondly, I go to lots and lots of sort of literary festivals and they're always packed, absolutely packed. Actually, one of the reasons I love going to India is because they read so much. I was just at the Jaipur Literary Festival. It was just every seat was filled in conversations about philosophy and, fictional archetypes and all sorts of stuff, absolutely packed. And it's the same in the UK. It's the same in America. And when I put on these live events that I do, people sit there all day and they watch. So I think that's true. And I think that, the New Yorker is doing really well. I just don't think you need mass numbers. I think it has to be, you have to be willing to pay a lot for quality. But I do think people do crave quality. They start to really crave it. It's like having terrible food every day, as you said before. There's suddenly a yearning builds up, for something really good that you haven't had before.
Right. Well, if you're the New Yorker, right, or any of these, if you are at the Ankler, like you can do a business serving the top 10th percentile of wage earners that spend the 50% of American money, right? So there is a business to be made from that for sure. But it's like,
something like CNN, for instance. I think that I would pay a lot for sort of real news. It's almost like the reverse of a lot of these streaming things where the idea is that you go down market. I mean, I actually think that there are quite a lot of people who actually might really love seeing all the incredible reporting that CNN doesn't put out. I mean, they have all these incredible correspondents all over the world, but they never get on the air, really. You never see them.
Yeah, how would you fix CNN, Tina? Maybe just as you stated, but
I would be a catastrophe out there, an idea, but I don't know. I feel I would that's what I'd do. That's my contribution. I would say, put all these amazing correspondents doing all this amazing, fabulous, reporting that goes into some, I don't know, like celluloid dustbin or like digital sort of, I don't know where it all goes, but they do have these correspondents all over the world. Why can't we see what they've done, and put them up and charge me a lot for it, and I would actually watch it.
I'm not paying to watch pundits argue with each other. That is
definitely not.
I would pay to not watch that, actually. It's exhausting.
It's totally exhausting, and yet they have amazing stuff that they do. So does Reuters and all these people. They have an excess, actually, of coverage that they don't really show. But just to go back to the Oscars for a minute, I was a bit sorry about Demi Moore.
Oh, my God. Well, you have a history with Demi Moore. So, I mean, that's you probably pregnant cover, Vanity Fair, epic. But I'm curious. Okay, so I have a couple theories. I'm going to see if you concur that, so people just don't like older women. That is historically, that sadly, I don't think that has changed through Me Too, the unwinding of Me Too, all of that. So I think people have a hard time with that. Now, Mikey Madison is more than half her age. And I got to make the point that Mikey Madison's performance was amazing. The movie is amazing. She is playing a sex worker, which is one of the areas where you win an Oscar as an actress.
This is true.
Janine Basinger has said you have to play a sex worker, a nun, or a deaf person, and there was only one deaf person who won. But
it's true.
That's it.
But the photograph of Demi Moore eating a huge kind of like cauldron of French fries afterwards, I felt sort of said it all. It was
my God!
Eaten in like 6 months.
Probably unzipped her dress a little bit. It was like, ugh, you just exhale. I thought it was very smart of her, though, and I'm sure you noticed this too, Tina, that instead of sulking away and licking her wounds, she went out to the Vanity Fair party.
No, she's a trooper. She's an old-fashioned show business. The show must go on. Absolutely.
The show must go on.
She was not and would not have been a sulker. And you're absolutely right. Nobody likes older women. There's every so often there are outbursts of saying that older women are now but it's just rubbish.
That's all a fake trend.
It's all bullshit.
No,
it's all bullshit.
There's no trend for older women.
Okay, so let's wind back to where we began with Meghan. I mean, what is the path forward for Meghan? Is there a path forward? Is this the last dance?
Okay, Meghan will never go away. That's the thing. There's, people, it's she is so determined, right? So I think I admire her ambition, and I admire her perseverance. It is hard to put yourself out there when you're just boom, boom, knocked down over and over again. But I think she'll just keep, as long as people give her money to make things, she will keep going at it.
But of course, I just had a picture as you spoke of her as this kind of 30 years from now as a kind of Zsa Gabor, as someone who's just a legend for being so many mistakes. It's eventually you become a legend, right? By just being there. So if you can just keep going and keep getting, knocked down and standing up and coming back, eventually you become a legend, and then that's your legend.
She'll become a gay icon. That is what I think is potentially in the future for her, right? What are these women who's been who can just tough it out? And so she'll be showing up at the Polo Lounge here, and people will applaud, and she'll. And Archie's going to be the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in the sense that he will be, he's going to be by far the coolest royal, let's face it, Archie. Absolutely. Don't forget, they're like the Kardashians. There's going to be another generation and then another. Yeah. You can't put them down.
This is absolutely true. And it's the same in the UK. They've got this 10-year lull, and then suddenly it's going to be the next gen, and everyone's going to be all over who Prince Georgie is. He's dating and is Prince Louis, it's all going to be about them and Archie and Lilibet. We must not forget.
Lilibet, right.
Lilibet.
Tina, can I ask you one question that before we leave? Okay. When we spoke last, you said you were really disgusted with all your billionaires who live in your neighborhood in New York City and they're supportive of Trump. Are they having regrets today, do you think? Do you think any
None.
of them? Yeah.
Well, they love what he's doing. I mean, they've all, when billionaires get together, all they talk about is how many people they want to fire. Right.
Yes.
My husband once went to Men's Week at the Golden Door. And he said that as they were having the massages, all they were doing was talking about how they were going to get back to the office and fire everybody. And, it really made him laugh. So they love what DOGE is doing. I think that they've always loved what, the tax cuts. So I think that they're not there yet. I think they have a bit of misgivings, of course, about Ukraine, a lot of them, but more so about the stock market. I mean, in the end, it's all going to be about the stock market. And if that does really go sideways in a serious way, they will probably, that's the moment when, the tide goes out and they see that he's naked. So, but Trump is so cunning. I mean, he'll find some way to manipulate that, I sort of feel, and then of course he'll turn on Musk and say it's all his fault and get rid of him. I mean, he's kind of setting Musk up to be the one who goes, if things go badly. So actually Musk for him is a very good heat shield, I think.
Oh boy. Well, that's yeah. And
no, I know it's not even something you want to think about too much, but listen, I love talking to you always, Janice. It's just so much fun. I hope we can do it again.
Absolutely.
We've been such beasts about so many things. It's been really fun. Okay. Lots of love.
Okay. Thank you, Tina.